Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check 1 2 3. Well, all right, folks. We are live. Thank you all. If you are watching right now live, or if you are watching later on, thank you so much for tuning in. A little bit of explanation, I'm sure, is probably necessary. Quite frankly, my schedule this week was just a little bit too busy for me to kind of do my normal schedule. I'm obviously doing kind of a wrestling run all the way up through the Royal Rumble, including an upcoming video that will be out soon with me booking the entirety of the Royal Rumble match. It's probably the biggest undertaking I have ever done in terms of a video. So I am very excited about it, but it's a lot of work. So obviously, my friend Dan and I have done a bunch of wrestling videos over the last few weeks. Recording those take a lot of time. Editing those take a lot of time. So it is one of those situations where I just didn't have enough time at the beginning of the week to prep, to write, and to do all the research I needed to in order to make it work in the time frame that is necessary. And so I've been wanting to maybe do a stream here and there, kind of get into that. And so I figured, why not this week? It'll buy me a little bit more time to prep. And it's going to be obviously a less edited version of the podcast, but it's basically going to be the same thing it always is in terms of the content itself. So, yeah, I just made the decision pretty recently to do that, and I'm very happy that I'm able to do it. So if you guys saw the thumbnail, there's a good amount of stuff I want to talk about today. And by the way, if you're new here, and this stream is the first thing that you've seen of me, hopefully you guys will enjoy. It would mean the world to subscribe. It'd mean the world to like. It'd mean the world to comment. All that good stuff. That would mean the world, again. So I would appreciate it. But again, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about today. And I think I better start with what is going to be the most pressing and the most kind of like current event and important, really, news. Not just of today, although the news literally broke today, but also really of the last handful of weeks, at least for me in my world of sports, and that is that Bill Belichick has agreed to mutually part ways with the New England Patriots. And I really should say that the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick have mutually agreed that they should part ways. The press conference that made it really official was earlier today. And so I'm trying to figure out what in the heck is in the corner. There's like a weird thing in the corner here. I'm not really sure what it is. I think that might be the Kinesio ball. Whatever. Anyways, the press conference was this morning, and they made it official. Bill Belichick is no longer basically acting general manager or head coach of the New England Patriots. They are starting over completely on that front in New England, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, as I'm sure most Patriots fans do. I'm sure there are Patriots fans out there that are very, very upset, and you know what? Fair enough, right? You know, he's a 6-time Super Bowl champion. He's been there for 24 years. You know, that is 1999. He has been there, or I guess 2000 was the first year, and the run of dominance that he had as head coach is unparalleled. It's unmatched in any era. 6 Super Bowl titles as a head coach, just as the Patriots head coach. I think he has 2 more. I know he has 1 more with the Giants. He might have 2 more with the Giants when he was a coordinator. But the run of dominance by Bill Belichick, unsurpassed, amazing. And so again, I understand if there are fans that are upset that did not want him to leave, that wanted them to kind of try and figure it out. And I'm sure that there are people that are ecstatic that he's gone. I'm not sure I understand that perspective, given the amazing success that he has had. But I think the real feelings that I have are right in the middle. I think that it was time for Bill Belichick to move on somewhere else. Or at the very least, I think it was the right time for the Patriots to move on from Bill Belichick. Now, I would have been okay had he remained the head coach. I wouldn't have been able to handle another year of him making all the draft decisions, right? He's made a lot of draft decisions. Some of them have been really good. Most of them, I'll say, maybe not even some of them, but most of them have been really, really bad. He's had a lot of good players come through his system, especially on defense, but a lot of those players are very, very late round picks or undrafted players. Now, obviously, he is a genius for that. He's great at finding those hidden gems in the late rounds and in undrafted free agents. He's great at that. But boy, howdy, when it comes to first, second, and third round picks, it's the track record basically over the last 7 to 8 to 10 years really has been horrible. I mean, the last good draft that I can remember him having, early on, first round, second round was, I think, was it 2011 or 2012 that Dante Hightower and Chandler Jones were both drafted in the first round. He traded up back into the first round to take Hightower. After taking Chandler Jones. I mean, two fantastic players. Obviously, Chandler Jones went on to have a lot of success both in New England and mostly, I would say, elsewhere, but still a great player nonetheless, so he's clearly saw the talent there. And then Dante Hightower had a very storied career in New England. Very, very impactful player, team captain, all that, the whole nine. So that's the last time I can remember really a very impactful first round pick. And it's not to say that he's had zero. Obviously, he drafted Gerard Mayo, who we'll talk about in a minute, in the first round, who was a Pro Bowl player. He was fantastic for us for many, many years. Obviously, I mentioned Dante Hightower, Chandler Jones. Devin McCourty was taken in the first round, although he had to change his position because initially he was having no success at all as a just pure corner. They drafted him as a pure corner out of Rutgers, I believe. But other than that, I mean, the draft success in the first round for the Patriots just hasn't really been there. I think Logan Mankins may have been a first round pick, and he had a great career. So, offensive lineman, great. But again, not a whole lot of success on first round picks, especially over the last 10 or so years. It's really since the Hightower and Jones draft, there hasn't really been a lot. And not all of that's his fault, right? It's not all up to it's not all up to foresight. A lot of it has to do with developing players and putting them in the position to be successful, which Bill Belichick, at the very least on defense, is very, very good at. But I think the narrative that has really started to come to light is that he's not good at putting players in a position to be successful on offense, whether it's quarterbacks, whether it's wide receivers, whether it's running backs, offensive linemen. I mean, we're actually starting to get, it doesn't really happen very often. We're starting to get players now basically saying, hey, here are the mistakes that we made. Here's why we weren't successful. This guy didn't get re-signed. This guy got traded. This guy left in free agency. We're starting to get that where, I never really heard people saying that before on the Patriots. Now, that may just be because I wasn't listening hard enough, to be fair. But definitely, in my experience, has not happened very often. So, pretty scary stuff if you're a Patriots fan to see that happening. And obviously there was a change that needed to be made. And again, I would have been personally okay with Bill Belichick just not being given the general manager role anymore and him still being the coach, because I do still think he has a lot of value and he is still a fantastic coach, especially on the defensive end. I think that while he certainly has his limitations in 2024 as a head coach. I think we're really going to start seeing the difference on defense. I think that is something where we're going to go, man, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Bill Belichick, there's some things about Bill Belichick coached teams that just are always the case. They do better than just about any team in the NFL has ever done. They take away your number one weapon. Now, does it happen every single play, every single game individually? No, of course not. There's been plenty of games where, they try to take away the number one option and it hasn't worked. Specifically this year, I can remember, I think it was week 2, we played the Dolphins initially at the beginning of the year. Tyreek Hill had a terrible game. Terrible game against the Patriots, and Tua threw a pick trying to get it to Tyreek Hill deep. Whereas normally it seems like Tyreek Hill's always open on those go routes or on those deep balls or on those posts. But in the second game, where, the personnel was a little bit lackluster because of injuries and obviously, different things like that, Tyreek Hill had a much, much better game. And so obviously you could plan around having Tyreek Hill not go off, but sometimes it's just going to happen. So did it happen every single game? No. But the vast majority of the time, Bill Belichick did an absolutely fantastic job of taking away your number one weapon as an offense. And he did it better than just about anybody I've ever seen. I think we're going to really, really see a difference there because there's just, again, things like that about Bill Belichick coach teams that are always the case. Other than this year, not beating yourself. A whole lot of penalties just are not a kind of function of the Patriots offense. This year was a little bit different. There were a lot of penalties this year, but there are just things that you're going to miss, and I'm going to miss. It's not just, I'm not pointing out any individual, but I'm going to miss it too. I think that, again, grass isn't always greener on the other side, but again, changes needed to be made. I don't think I would have nor should have anybody else that's a Patriots fan accepted the status quo and the exact same thing because this is a different position than we've been in 20 years. We have the 3rd pick in the draft. I was hoping that the Commanders would beat the Cowboys. I tweeted about it. It obviously did not happen. The Cowboys destroyed them. But, a boy can hope. We have the 3rd pick. We have a lot of draft capital. We cannot, this draft and this offseason, we have $55 million in cap space going into this offseason. This is the offseason that is going to define the next 5 years of the Patriots team. Are we going to take the right steps forward to competing in the next 2 years, or are we going to sentence ourselves to a very long-term rebuild? Now, depending on where you go in the draft and what you can and can't do in free agency and who decides to join your team, you are going to be in one of those two positions. You're either going to immediately start competing again because, guys, the Bills and Dolphins, who are obviously the 2 best teams in the AFC East right now, are wildly inconsistent. They don't give me any reason to believe that this division is not winnable if we put a quality product out on the field. Just being honest. I thought the Dolphins were going to run away with the division this year. They lost very winnable games to the Bills and obviously some other lesser teams in the NFL. And I'm not to say the Bills were, super lesser than. They obviously, it came down to the last week of the year to see who would win the division. But both those teams lost winnable games. Bills obviously lost to the Patriots this year. So it's to Mac Jones, by the way, not even to Bailey Zappi's Patriots, to Mac Jones, who has been benched, ostracized, made fun of, everything and everything in between. At this point, 5th-year option's not getting picked up, obviously, and he's going to be gone. I mean, unless we can find some trade package for him, he's just going to leave in free agency, and that's going to be it. I'd be shocked if he came back. So, this is going to define the next 5 years. Can you successfully bring in quality free agents that are going to help your team? Can you help rebuild your offensive line? Can you get some weapons for either Bailey Zappi, or do you draft Jaden Daniels or Drake May, or do you trade up for Caleb Williams, or whatever the case may be in the draft? Do you get a first-round rookie? Do you take your chances with your high pick in the second round, hoping that Michael Penix from Washington is still there, or J.J. McCarthy from Michigan is still there? What do you do? It's tough to say specifically what you do until we start kind of getting closer and training camp, or not training camp, but the combine starts and we kind of see where guys are going to fall. I would love to get a great quarterback in the second round and take Marvin Harrison Jr. in the first round. I would love that. I think that would be super ideal. Obviously, that may not happen, especially since Jaden Daniels has shot up from, I think he started out this year somewhere in the 15 to 20 range, maybe a little bit lower, maybe, 10 to 15. And now he's going top 3 in just about all mock drafts that I've seen over the last week or two. He obviously won the Heisman. Great player. I'd love to have him on the Patriots, but I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm a big fan of Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. So just bias-wise, I would love to have Marvin Harrison on the Patriots, especially since we don't have any wide receivers that I trust moving forward. Kendrick Bourne's going to be our number 1 wide receiver next year again, or Demario Douglas, who I really like. I love Pop. But he's not ready to be a number 1 wide receiver yet, nor should he have to be. He was a 7th-round draft pick this past season. He shouldn't be your number 1 wide receiver. I'm sorry, he just shouldn't be. There should be other talent around him. Hunter Henry, I believe, is a free agent this year. If he's not a free agent this year, he's going to be next year, but I'm pretty sure he's a free agent this year. You've got a lot of guys whose contracts are up. Kyle Duggar is very important to bring back. Josh Uche, not quite as important, but we do need pass rush, even though Christian Barmore stepped up a lot this year. Judon's coming back. We didn't have him for their whole year, so it's kind of hard to gauge. But yeah, there's some guys that you need to bring back, but you also, again, you're going to have somewhere probably, if you bring everybody back that you need to bring back, you're probably still going to have about $25 million in cap space. And that's before you restructure contracts or make cuts or clear out anything. I just truly believe that this is the most important offseason we're going to have. And so getting rid of Bill Belichick, while it is painful, while I do still wish he was our coach, I would not have accepted the status quo draft-wise or free agency-wise, strategy-wise. It just would not have worked. There's too many holes specifically on this offense that need to be patched. I'm not as worried about the defense, especially if you bring Kyle Duggar back, because Jabril Peppers is still around. Obviously, Adrian Wilson is still around. You've still got Miles Bryant, who's there. J.C. Jackson, I'm not really sure what's going to happen to him. I hope they bring him back on a cheap contract. I think he did serviceable. He was probably in a bigger role than what the team envisioned just because of injuries. Obviously, Jalen Mills is a guy that's still around. Christian Gonzalez will come back. I think he would have been very high up there in Rookie of the Year, at least Defensive Rookie of the Year. Voting, it would have been difficult to defeat Devin Witherspoon in Seattle because he was like the only defensive rookie to do a billion different things as a DB with sacks and passes defended and all that good stuff. It would have been tough, but he would have been in the race for sure. He would have been definitely top 2 or 3 as far as I'm concerned. I'm not as concerned about the defense, but the offense is just brutal. I mean, no offensive line help or depth. Obviously, no real number 1 wide receiver, especially after Kendrick Bourne went down. He was the closest thing you had, which even that's really sad. So there's a lot of things that I would change and a lot of things that I would do different. And I think getting rid of Bill Belichick was the first step. Now, where do they go from here in terms of a coach? I think it's Gerard Mayo. I feel like the job's really his to lose at this point. He has done really, really well as the defensive coordinator over the last, I think it's been 3 years. It may have only been 2, but I'm pretty sure it's 3. After Brian Flores and Matt Patricia and all them left, I'm pretty sure he's taken over since then. They've had a top 5 defense every year since he's taken over. Even though last year the offense was so bad, they kept turning the ball over, and the defense just kept holding strong no matter how much they were out there, how tired they were, how little points the Patriots had. I mean, again, there were 3 weeks in a row where the defense gave up 10 or less points, and we lost all 3 games. So the defense was phenomenal, and so I think Gerard Mayo has auditioned about as well as he possibly could have. And for those people who are worried, oh, well, he's not Bill Belichick. Clearly he's not. But he has been with the Patriots in some capacity since 2008. He was drafted in the first round, I think the first round, maybe the second, by the Patriots. And he played somewhere in the realm of 7 or 8 seasons. Several of those were Pro Bowl seasons. Several of those were him leading the league in tackles, even though that's a very incomplete stat and doesn't really tell the whole story of how effective a player is. Like, for instance, Blake Martinez led the league in tackles, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, and it was mainly because he couldn't cover anybody. So he was just tackling guys that were, either running backs that were, catching balls out of the backfield, or were just getting past the pretty bad Giants defensive line at the time, and he was just kind of cleaning up, or he was just letting up passes. So it's a bit of an incomplete stat, but still, leading the league in tackles is nothing to sneeze at. I think that's not a bad stat. I just think it's incomplete. The point being, he's been in the Patriots system for 15 years. In some capacity, whether as a player, whether as a scout, whether as a coach, whatever it's been, he's been in the Patriot system. He knows this system and how this place operates from top to bottom like the back of his hand. So I think that you're going to want a guy that upholds Belichick's standards in a lot of ways, while also hopefully turning over personnel decisions to people who are a little bit more in tune with analytics, are a little bit more kind of, aggressive. We always see the Patriots trade back. That's another reason why I'm a little happy that Belichick is gone, because, the joke is, oh, hey, well, the Patriots have a top 3 pick, but if Belichick's drafting, he's probably just going to trade back to 29, get 2 additional third-round picks, one this year and one 3 years from now, and then take a third-round guard in the first round. Like, that's kind of the joke, because that seems to be what happens pretty much every year. Or a bust of a wide receiver or a DB. That's basically how it goes every year. But this year can't happen. You don't pick in the top 5, especially if you're the Patriots very often over the last 20 years. You got to make it count. So, anyways, again, that's really my thoughts on Bill Belichick and him leaving. I'm sad in a lot of ways, but also excited in a lot of ways. So we'll see how it goes. I will say my top 3 candidates for Bill Belichick's replacement. Number 1 is Gerard Mayo. I think he's the favorite to win the job. I think he's probably, I'd say 95% chance going to get the job, because I feel like they've already kind of told him that he's getting the job, but you never know. My number 3, I know I'm skipping 2. You'll understand why in a minute. My number 3 choice is Mike Vrabel, who just got fired from the Titans for some reason. I don't think really a lot of people understand that. He's a great coach. He didn't have a good team this year. They traded their number 1 wide receiver for a box of rocks and a bag of half-eaten peanuts. And the first-round wide receiver, Traylon Burks, that they drafted to replace him, who was supposed to be the main piece in that trade, has been injured and has drop issues, and it just has not been good. I liked Traylon Burks coming out of the draft. I think he was in Arkansas? I can't remember. I really liked him. I honestly thought he'd be the best wide receiver in the first round. I was very wrong. But, anyway, Mike Vrabel's a great coach. Couldn't understand at all why they fired him. I know they had a bad year, but injuries, underperformance, rookie QB for most of the year, or Ryan Tannehill, yuck. So I don't get it. I think he's my 3rd choice. He obviously is in the Patriots Hall of Fame. He was a great linebacker for us, won multiple Super Bowls. I think most famous for his catches in the Super Bowls or in playoff games, and his touchdowns as a kind of a tight end. They bring in for some packages. But anyways, he's a Hall of Famer. He knows our system too. And Bill Belichick loves the guy, and he loves Bill Belichick. So I feel like he's a guy that could really uphold the standard too. But my number 2 pick for the Patriots head coach is a guy that just so happened to retire recently, the night before Bill Belichick got fired, or mutually parted ways with the Patriots, and maybe not got fired. And he just so happens to be, in my mind anyway, the greatest college football coach of all time. Nick Saban. Retired from Alabama. And my theory is that he retired not because he's getting old, not because he doesn't love the game, because he can't really stand the way the NIL and sponsorships and all that stuff and how much money he's going to have to pay just to recruit guys now. So I think he wants to take a break from college football. And I think if you pay the man enough money to take Bill Belichick, who they just happen to be very close friends, place, I think that there's an argument to be made that he would probably not refuse that, especially if Bill went to him and said, hey, that job is yours if you want it. Robert Kraft would love to have you as our coach. And guess what? I'd love to have Nick Saban as our coach, because if anybody is going to uphold the defensive, psychotic, do-your-job standard that Bill Belichick has had over the last 20 years, it's Nick Saban. So, yeah, not going to happen. Obviously, I'd give that a 0.0001% chance of happening, but I think it'd be fun, and I wouldn't completely rule it out until, obviously, the Patriots do decide to give Gerard Mayo the job, which, again, 95% chance that's what's going to happen. So, but anyway, that's my those are my thoughts on Bill Belichick leaving the Patriots. Still a little sad about it, but it is what it is. Next couple of things I want to talk about is a couple of moves the Red Sox made. They signed Lucas Giolito to a 2-year contract, 2-year, because it obviously has an opt-out after the first year. I believe the contract is somewhere in the realm of $18 to $19 million per year. I think it's 2 years, $38 million, which I think is fine. I think oftentimes we kind of get lost in the amount of money we're paying for a guy and, the overpay. But, we have the cap space right now, and unless Lucas Giolito is going to be firmly, in your plans for the future and is going to become a Cy Young Award candidate again, he's going to be here for 1 year. So it's not like we are saying, oh, this is like our ace of the future for the next 15 years or whatever. No, he is here for 1 year. And the reason I think that is because, one, $19 million is a perfect middle ground contract, a perfect prove-it contract for a guy like Giolito who, Cy Young Award candidate for a bunch of years, obviously. I think he might have even won one. I can't remember. But either way, $19 million is too much for a guy that, is going to have a 5 ERA like he did last year. So if he stinks again, they're going to, not bring him back. Or if he somehow returns to Cy Young, his Cy Young ways or his old Cy Young ways, he's going to opt out of his contract because he doesn't want to only make $19 million when he just dominated, right? So either way, unless he's he just ends up being a perfect number 2 or number 3 where he's got like a 4.2 ERA and he has good strikeout to walk ratio, but not great. He was hurt here and there. Unless he's right in the middle, which is pretty unlikely, he's not staying more than a year without restructuring the contract or signing an extension. So I think it's fine. I think that quite frankly, we just needed bodies to pitch for us this year. So I'll take anybody. I'm hoping that, Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell or some of these other free agent pitchers do end up coming to Boston, just because we need pitchers. I mean, we just legit need bodies that are going to give us innings and hopefully not have their arm explode. That's really what we need at the moment. Especially because the second thing with the Red Sox, the second move that they made was they traded Chris Sale to the Braves for Vaughn Grissom. And I do believe that it was straight up. I didn't see any other details of the trade. I think it's just straight up Chris Sale for Vaughn Grissom. And I like that trade a lot. Obviously, again, it's mixed feelings, right? Chris Sale, I love Chris Sale. I was so excited when we traded for him back in, I think, 2017. Maybe late 2016, somewhere in that range. That's, that offseason, whatever it was. So I guess it would have been right around this time, 2017, I believe, when we traded for him from the White Sox. And, he did his job, right? He was there for a World Series, and he was great. There's not really a whole lot else that I can ask of the guy. He was an ace on a World Series winning team. That's about all you can ask of a guy. That's what you hope for when you trade for a guy like that. And it happened. Obviously, it hasn't happened in 5 years, but it doesn't matter. It happened while he was here. So, who cares? I think that it's just been a crummy set of circumstances for him. He just keeps getting injured. Last year, was his best year, and it wasn't even all that great by Chris Sale's standards. And that's the problem, right? I love Chris Sale. I wish him the best. I never wanted him to leave Boston, but it's one of those things where it just benefited both parties for them to part. Because if you stay in the same place that's killing you, you're just an insane person. And it's not to say that the Red Sox themselves were killing him. It just, the situation that he was in, he just kept bad luck after bad luck after bad luck, injury after injury. And, eventually you got to get out of there and you got to have a fresh start. Go to a place where, somebody might really care. Not that nobody cares, but maybe just a new situation, new trainers working on new mechanics, with a different mentality than the Red Sox have. Maybe that helps Chris Sale. He already signed an extension with Atlanta. I think it was somewhere around 22, 24 million a year, something like that. 26. I can't remember exactly the figures of that, but it was a 2-year extension. I think that's definitely a gamble that they're taking, but my goodness, if he's even 2/3 of what he was in his prime for them, he's not going to, be one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball, but if he can be a upper tier number 3 or a lower tier number 2 for them, you've already got Max Fried and Spencer Strider. I mean, that 3-headed monster is going to be difficult to deal with in the playoffs. And, maybe you get, Huascar Yanoa back, who had a great year 2 years ago and last year just struggled mightily, got sent down to the minors and really did nothing. Maybe he returns to his form. And then you've obviously got your other younger guys like Schuster that can step up. And I think Charlie Morton is still there, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's a really good, if not the best in baseball rotation that I can think of. I mean, obviously the Dodgers, right? I mean, when Shohei comes back, they're going to be in the running. And then the Phillies obviously are in the running. There's a few other teams too. Rangers if they're fully healthy. But I think the Braves rotation is absolutely insanely good, especially when they're all healthy, right? So it's going to be interesting to see. But, moving back onto the Red Sox side of it, Vaughn Grissom is just a player that I think fits them really well right now. A guy that struggled mightily on defense at shortstop in the minors and in the majors, but he's not going to be playing shortstop. He's going to be playing second base. So hopefully that helps. I don't necessarily know how that'll help. I think arm strength wise, that'll help. I don't think he has the best arm in the world, but he's a great hitter, and he's always had a plus bat. And he gets on base a lot. He doesn't have crazy power or anything, but he gets on base. And he is a good contact hitter, and he just obviously, as most young guys do, especially in today's baseball, you got to cut down on the strikeouts and walk a little bit more. But he's young, he's controllable for I think 5 years, maybe 6 after this year, or including this year, I should say. So I think, and the Red Sox just desperately needed a second baseman. I mean, desperately needed a second baseman. Trevor Story's going to come back and be the shortstop next year, it seems. Hopefully his arm holds up. I know he's had arm troubles. So we'll see what happens. But I think it was a win-win for both teams. I think we desperately needed a guy like Grissom that we can help build our young core around. And I think the Braves they're trying to win not just one World Series like they did 2 years ago, but they're trying to win 3, 4, 5, 6. And, to have a guy like Chris Sale that if he's healthy, he's still very effective as your third pitcher in your rotation. I mean, that's just unbelievable. I think they had to make that trade if it was available. And plus, I think the Braves have enough shortstop depth in their minors that getting rid of Vaughn Grissom is not going to, set them back for years. It's not like Arcia is like the they're like, oh, we got to get rid of Arcia in the next year or two or else we're going to fail as a franchise. No, of course not. They have enough young players to build around and long-term contracts to build around that they're going to be fine. So, I think it's a win-win for both teams. I like it probably a little bit better for the Braves than I do for the Red Sox, but if I had to give grades, it's an A for the Braves and an A- or a B+ for the Red Sox. I think both teams ended up great with this, but I do like it a little bit better for the Braves just because, again, Chris Sale is a more proven player, and they're in win-now mode. I think it was a really shrewd move. And based on their other depth in their organization, I don't think they really gave up a whole lot to get him. So, good for the Braves, good for the Red Sox. Hopefully it works out for both sides. Now is when I'm going to start to get really angry here. just giving you all a fair warning, right? I got to talk about the refs in the NBA right now. I know people are going to say, oh, you're just a biased Celtics fan and they got screwed one game and you're going to scream about the refs. Yes, I am. And I admit it and I don't care. And it's not just that game, but it's other games too. So the NBA referees and really the NFL referees too, both really sports have really started to get on my nerves. And I don't know if it's just the kind of advent of social media and the way that everything is clipped and everything is shown and everybody can see everything all the time and we're just inundated with data. I don't know if that plays a part in it. I'm sure it does, but I just feel like referees are making bad calls late in games so much more often than I remember when I was a kid. Like, I feel like it happens at least once or twice every week. I mean, there was a game where the Colts got absolutely just demolished by the referees on the last drive of the game versus, I think it was the Chiefs. I can't remember who they were playing, but they just got demolished by the refs. I mean, they had a chance to win that game, and the refs just basically went, actually, I don't think you're going to win this game today. I don't really feel like having you guys win, so we're going to have them win. Like, it happened multiple times throughout the NFL season to multiple different teams. It happened to the Packers. It happened to the Colts. It happened to the Chiefs. I mean, there's multiple games where referees are basically just taking games into their own hands late in games, not calling obvious penalties, calling ticky-tack penalties, on the last drive of the game when they haven't been calling it all game to basically cost the other team. Like, it happens a lot. And now you're seeing it in the NBA too. Now, for those of you who do not know what I'm talking about, the main culprit, I'm going to talk about the main two culprits, but the main culprit for me was a few nights ago, the Celtics were playing the Indiana Pacers in Indiana. Very interesting game. Both teams shot over 53% from the field and over 45% from three as a team. So it was a ridiculously high-scoring game. I think it was 133-131 was the final in regulation. To put into perspective, last night, as of time of recording, the Celtics beat the Timberwolves 127-120 in overtime in Boston, where you would think that the Celtics offense would be a little bit more efficient than as opposed to on the road in Indiana like it was. But that's not the case. So in Indiana, both teams were just chucking them up and making everything, it seemed like. It was very frustrating to watch as a Celtics fan, just, role players on the Pacers hitting 50% from three or 70% from three, depending on the player. Like, it just was very annoying. But the Pacers are a great team. So, I've talked about them on the podcast before. I had Evan on the podcast. He's a Pacers fan. He knows how big of a fan I am of not only Tyrese Halliburton, but the Pacers organization and how they're doing their rebuild. I think that they're a lot of fun to watch. I just hate when the Celtics play against them because they are relentless. They don't stop, and it is a headache, and I do not want to face them in the playoffs. I will tell you that right now. I think if the Celtics face the Pacers in the first round of the playoffs, we might lose. Like, that's how good they are. But getting back to the game, it was tied 131-131 at the end of regulation. Celtics had the ball. Jaylen Brown drives, and to be fair to everybody, it was not a good shot, right? He basically threw it up in triple coverage. He basically took it upon himself, didn't make the right play, shouldn't have shot that shot. However, it is no denial, or there's no denying that he got hit in the back of the head by Buddy Hield. There's video proof of it. You can watch it. You can look it up. He got hit in the back of the head on his shot. He got hit in the back of the head, and then Buddy Hield hit the back of his hand as he was shooting and then hit the ball. So the referees rightly called a foul on Buddy Hield. Now, there are, no joke, 3 seconds left in the game. That is not an exaggeration. It may have been 4 seconds. Less than 5 seconds left in the game when this foul was called. So, tied 131-131, Jaylen Brown gets 2 free throws. That's a big deal. If he makes even one of those, you put yourself in a fantastic position to win the game if you're the Celtics on the road without Jason Tatum, who's your best player. Now, obviously, halfway through the game or something like that, Tyrese Halliburton went down as well, and so he didn't play for a lot of the game either. So really, it was kind of even-steven with both 2 best players out. But either way, you put yourself in a great position. Now, the Pacers had a challenge. They hadn't used their challenge, so obviously 3 seconds left in the game, they asked to review it. Because they have nothing to lose. If they lose the challenge, they lose the timeout, it doesn't really matter. I don't know if they had another timeout if they'd have lost that. But either way, there's 3 seconds left in the game. You're going to be down. You're already in a bad position. It doesn't matter if you lose timeout. It's better to win the challenge and get the ball back with, 3 to 5 seconds left, call your timeout and advance the ball. That's way better than if you lose your timeout and you're down. So, or at least probably down. Jaylen Brown would have had to make his free throws, which is not a guarantee, although he is around an 80% free throw shooter this year. So it's probably would have at least made one. So, anyway, the referees review the play and bafflingly, mind-bogglingly, and unbelievably frustratingly, they overturned the call. So it wasn't even a situation where the referees initially got the call wrong, where they said it wasn't a foul, and the Celtics reviewed it, and they said there's not enough evidence to overturn it. Yes, that would have been a little frustrating, but I would have at least understood. They actually got the call right the first time and then overturned it to the wrong call, saying, it was incidental head contact. I'm sorry, what does that mean? I'm pretty sure there is no such thing as incidental head contact unless you hit the ball first, which Buddy Hield clearly did not. And even if you hit the ball first, 99 times out of 100, if you hit somebody in the head, you're still getting called for a foul. At the very least, maybe it's just a continuation foul, and the other team will get the ball side out, which if that was the case, fine. Jaylen Brown doesn't get any free throws, but he still got hit in the head, and the Celtics will still have the ball back. But amazingly, they said, nope, it was incidental head contact, which again, does not exist. That's not a thing. If you get hit in the head when you're shooting, it's a foul. That's how it works. I don't care if you get poked in the eye or if you get just punched in the face with brass knuckles. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. It's a foul regardless. But that's not even the worst part. Although, well, maybe that is the worst part, but that's not even the end of it. Because on the other end, now the Pacers get their challenge back. It's still a tie game. And they get the ball and get to advance it with a chance to win the game. And again, I've already said their offense was hitting everything under the sun. So you basically feel like you have no chance if you're the Celtics, or at least if you're a Celtics fan. So they inbound the ball to, I think it was Benedict Mathurin. And Kristaps Porzingis comes flying out of the paint and jumps and blocks Benedict Mathurin. I think it was Benedict Mathurin anyway. Whoever the shooter was, blocks him. Clean block. And they call a foul. And you look at the replay over and over again, and it is 100%. He is going straight up in the air, clean block, only contacted the ball until, he didn't contact the body at all, basically, until the ball was already free, after the block had already occurred, which is fine. You can make contact with somebody's arm and shoulders and chest and all that stuff if you've already made contact with the ball and it's a clean block. We see that all the time. You just can't hit them in the head, obviously. So, it's a clean block. Of course, the referees call a foul on Kristaps Porzingis. Long story short, Pacers get 2 free throws. They make them both. They win the game. The Celtics legitimately had no chance to win that game at the end. They got screwed out of that game. And I know people say that all the time, oh, the referees lost them the game. No, the last 2-minute report came out, and the referees who watched the footage admitted that the call on Kristaps Porzingis was wrong, that it should have been a clean block, which means that bare minimum, the Celtics would have had a side out with like 1 second left or half a second left. That wouldn't have mattered. The game would have gone into overtime, and the Celtics would have had a chance to win the game in overtime. Does that mean they would have won the game in overtime? No. The Pacers were on fire, and they were on the road. They meaning the Celtics. So, sure, they might have lost the game in overtime, but that would have been okay. What's not okay is when the referees crotch chop until you lose. That is not okay. When you basically tell a team, oh, this foul that was called for you is not a foul even though you got hit in the head in a tie game with 3 seconds left, but this foul on the other side is not a foul and we're going to call it because we don't feel like you should win this game today. That's not okay. And then the next night, amazingly, LeBron actually, started complaining in favor of the Celtics, which, I mean, he hates the Celtics. So that tells you how bad the calls were, right? Where even LeBron, who hates the Celtics, I'm pretty sure more than he hates the aspect that he's getting older and will have to stop playing basketball at some point, he was even defending the Celtics in these scenarios. So, if that tells you anything, the Lakers got 23 free throws in the fourth quarter as a team against the Raptors. And I'm pretty sure they won the game by like 2. And the Raptors, I think, got like 2 in the whole quarter and like 6 free throw attempts the whole game. Like I'd have to go back and actually look at the numbers. I haven't looked at them in a couple of days since it happened. But regardless, I know that their coach, Darko, I don't remember, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but their head coach for the Raptors was furious that Scotty Barnes, who drives in a lot and is getting, he's a star in this league and all that stuff, he had 2 free throw attempts the whole game. And he felt like that they just weren't calling anything for the Raptors and were calling everything for the Lakers. And of course, LeBron after the game said that all the calls were correct and he felt like they were all fouls because, they were in his favor. But obviously, you wouldn't expect anything less, not just from LeBron, but from anybody, obviously. I mean, I wouldn't expect, I would do the same thing probably. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is with that. But, wow, I mean, just absolutely brutal stuff from the refs this past week in the NBA and in the NFL over the whole course of the season. It's getting ridiculous that these refs are just taking the game into their own hands at the end of games, and the worst punishment that they get is they might not be able to ref playoff games, which I'm sure financially incentivizes them. I understand that you probably get a huge bonus and stuff if you ref in the playoffs. I get it. That's a punishment enough, I guess, for the individual. But at the same time, you're not doing anything to rectify the wrongs that these refs are having. The Celtics could, in theory, get to the end of the season and be tied with Milwaukee or Philadelphia or Orlando or Indiana or whoever for the number 1 seed and lose a seed because the referee screwed them out of that Indiana game early in the season. Or because, or the Raptors may, have had the 5th pick in the draft, and that pick actually ended up being the number 1 pick in the draft, but instead they have the 4th pick and they ended up dropping to 9. Like, you just never know what's going to happen, and these referees are not getting, these situations are not being rectified. These referees are not being punished. Their decisions are not being overturned. We're not having replayed games. I know it starts to get murky, and I'm not saying that we should do that on a wide scale, but there are just games where I get so frustrated at referees that I just wish, I don't want there to be robot refs or robot umps. But gosh darn it, weeks like this make me want them, to be honest. But anyway, I'm going to try not to have a stroke for all of you watching. So I am going to move on to my next topic, which is just thanking all of you guys for being here, for listening to the stream today. I really, really appreciate everything that you guys have given me over the last handful of weeks, because I'm so thrilled that I get to do this. And I know it's been a couple of weeks since I've done a sports-oriented podcast, but it's just because I've been so inundated with holidays and then coming back and getting back to work and doing all the wrestling stuff and the Royal Rumble stuff. And I'm leaving in a couple of weeks to go to the Royal Rumble. So it's been a lot. But I'm going to end this stream here. Thank you all so much for watching. I think there's a week in between NFL playoffs. I'll have to look. But I'm going to try and get some predictions out for the NFL playoffs coming up before the playoffs actually start. Actually, you know what? I'm live streaming. I can just look it up right here. You guys understand. This is not being edited. Okay. So the first playoff game is... Oh, they actually are this weekend. Okay. So I am going to have to hop on that real quick and probably do that at some point over the next day or two, because the first game is on Saturday at 4:30. So I got to get it out before then, but that should be no problem. I'll probably do it Saturday morning, so it should come out Saturday afternoon. But that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you all so very much for joining the stream. If you guys want to see stuff like this in the future, if you want me to stream more, let me know. But thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.